He thought it was just another ordinary day. The smell of coffee, the sound of the shower running, the soft murmur of his wife's voice on the phone. Everything felt familiar, until she said the words that shattered his world. "Don't worry, he has no idea." His chest tightened, a sharp breath. No, it couldn't be what he feared. But then he saw it, the smug smile in the mirror, the kind of smile that wasn't meant for him anymore. She thought she had control. She thought she was untouchable. She was wrong. Now, the rules have changed. Now, he is the one writing the ending. Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If it's your first time here, don't forget to subscribe and like this video, as every like truly inspires me. Now, let's get started. The day everything fell apart began like any other. I woke to the comforting aroma of coffee brewing, the soft sound of the shower running, and the distant murmur of Emma's voice, speaking low on the phone. At first, it didn't seem unusual. She often took calls in the mornings, but something in her tone caught my ear. It was too soft, too guarded, like she was trying to mask something behind her words. I stood there, still groggy, leaning against the doorframe, listening. "No, he's still asleep," she said. "Yeah, last night was amazing." A brief pause followed, and then that laugh, the one that used to be reserved for me. It was a deep, throaty laugh I hadn't heard in months. A sharp pang of unease gripped my chest, but my mind pushed it away. No, it couldn't be what I feared. I stepped closer, trying to make sense of the moment. The bathroom door was slightly ajar, just enough for me to catch her reflection in the mirror. Wrapped in a towel, her wet hair clinging to her shoulders, Emma wore a smile, smug, almost self-satisfied, as she listened to whoever was on the other end. My stomach twisted, and then came the words that sent a chill through my veins. "Don't worry about him. He's clueless." How long I stood there, I couldn't say. It could have been seconds, or maybe minutes. The sound of water dripping from the shower, birds singing outside, and her quiet voice seemed to blur together, creating a strange, surreal atmosphere. Everything felt so ordinary, so deceptively normal, even though something was deeply wrong. I should have barged in right then, demanded she confess, but instead, I turned away, heart pounding, mind racing. I needed proof. I needed undeniable proof. That evening, something felt off. Emma was overly affectionate, almost sweet in a way that was unlike her usual self. She curled up beside me on the couch, tracing light circles on my arm, something she hadn't done in months. It wasn't love, it was guilt, wrapped in false tenderness. I played along. Over the next few days, I kept a closer watch on her. She was cautious, but not cautious enough. I caught glimpses of secretive smiles as she texted, saw her angle her phone away from me, and noticed excuses that didn't quite hold up. And then came the night I knew for sure. Emma was in the shower again, and her phone was left unattended on the nightstand for the first time in weeks. My hands shook as I picked it up, already knowing what I was about to find. Before I even had to search, a message appeared on the screen. "I can still taste you. Same time tomorrow." The contact name was just a single letter, J. Everything around me seemed to blur. My vision faltered at the edges. I clutched the phone tighter, my fingers white-knuckled, and scrolled through the messages. Each one more explicit, more intimate than the last. Each one felt like a knife to my chest. And then came the final blow. A photo. Not just of her, but of them together. They were tangled up in hotel sheets, her face flushed, his arm wrapped possessively around her waist. He held her like she was his, like I didn't exist. The bathroom door creaked open. Steam billowed out. Emma stepped into the bedroom, towel wrapped around her body, her wet hair dripping as she shook it out. Her eyes met mine, and she froze when she saw the phone in my hand. For the first time, I saw it, the fear, the raw guilt, flash across her face. But it was fleeting. She quickly masked it, trying to act as if nothing was wrong. Without a word, I turned the phone toward her so she could see exactly what I'd discovered. She didn't even flinch. No denial. No surprise. Instead, she rolled her eyes, sighed sharply, and said the words that destroyed everything left inside me. "Don't touch me. I can't stand you." A high-pitched ringing filled my ears, and the world seemed to darken. Then, in a cold tone I'd never heard from her before, she added, "I was going to tell you eventually. I found out why." And she was shocked. The silence between us was suffocating, thick with tension. Emma didn't seem embarrassed. She didn't seem afraid. If anything, she seemed irritated, as though I was the one at fault for uncovering her secret. I stood there, clutching the phone so hard my fingers ached. My thoughts were a storm, clashing against one another, but the only words that escaped my mouth were, "Who is he?" Emma, her voice dripping with impatience, responded, "Does it matter?" She walked past me as though I were nothing, casually picking up a lotion bottle from the dresser and rubbing it into her arms like we were just having a normal conversation. "Does it matter?" A humorless laugh escaped me. The words barely left my throat. This wasn't real. This couldn't be happening. I stepped toward her, forcing her to look at me. "Yeah, Emma, it matters." My voice trembled, but I didn't care. "Who the hell is Jay?" She didn't answer. Instead, she removed the towel from her head, letting her hair fall loosely around her shoulders. Slowly, deliberately, she walked to the closet, pulled out a nightgown, and slipped it on, as if we were casually discussing anything but the betrayal she had just laid bare. I was about to demand an explanation when her phone buzzed in my hand. Another message from Jacob. "Tell him yet?" "Hope not. I love when you're still his wife." Everything around me seemed to tilt. I looked up at Emma, hoping to find some sign of remorse, something to suggest she regretted any of this. But all I got was a smug, self-satisfied grin. "Guess you know now," she said, her voice light, almost mocking. "So, what's your plan?" she added, her tone casually indifferent, as if she wasn't the one dismantling our life. It was like she'd already decided I wasn't worth saving. That hit me harder than anything. I grabbed her phone and threw it against the wall. It shattered into countless pieces, bits of plastic and glass scattered across the floor. Emma didn't flinch. Fear wasn't what I saw in her eyes. No, she was furious, fury boiling over. "What the hell, Larry?" she screamed, stepping toward me, fists clenched. "Am I the crazy one?" I laughed bitterly, shaking my head in disbelief. "You're the one cheating, and I'm the one losing it?" She rolled her eyes and walked past me, muttering, "Oh, grow up." "Grow up?" My pulse pounded in my ears, my hands trembling. "How long?" The question came out barely a whisper, my voice strained, barely controlled. Emma didn't answer right away. Instead, she walked over to the dresser, picked up a hairbrush, and started combing through her damp hair, acting as if we were just casually passing time on a normal night. "Emma," I said, my voice cold, the edge of menace cutting through my words. "How long?" She met my eyes in the mirror before turning to face me. A beat passed, and then she finally spoke, the words like a punch to the gut. "A year." The air left my lungs. A year. I staggered backward, as though she'd physically hit me. A year, 12 months, 52 weeks. Every meal, every conversation, every moment we shared now felt like a lie. All of it, while she was with someone else. I could hardly breathe. Emma crossed her arms and regarded me with an unreadable expression. "Guess you figured it out," she said flatly. "Why, Emma?" I choked out. "Why would you do this?" She took a slow, deliberate step forward. Then, the words that crushed what little hope I had left came tumbling out. "Because I can. You're predictable, Larry. You're safe." She paused, her gaze sharpening. "And safe gets boring." A wave of nausea hit me. I clenched my fists, my whole body tight with rage. "So that's it? You just threw everything away because you got bored? Emma sighed, her annoyance clear. I didn't plan for this, okay? But then I met Jacob and… I don't know. He makes me feel alive. Alive, I repeated bitterly, the word like a hollow echo. Yeah. She nodded, her eyes distant. Like I actually want to wake up in the morning. Like I'm not just going through the motions with… She waved her hand in my direction. This. This? I echoed, my voice flat. You call this… this? Emma waved dismissively, clearly done with this conversation. Larry, let's be real. You're not exactly thrilling. Something inside me shattered, snapping like glass breaking under pressure. Emma rubbed her temples, looking exasperated. Look, if you're done with the melodrama, maybe we should figure out what's next. I blinked, barely processing what I was hearing. What's next? Yeah, you're obviously upset. So do you want a divorce, or are you going to try and be a big boy about it? I could barely process the words coming out of her mouth. Divorce, or be a big boy? The world around me seemed to blur. My chest was tight, my heart hammering in my ears. She had destroyed everything we had, lied to me, betrayed me, and now she was acting like I had a choice, like I should be grateful she was even offering me the option to decide whether we stayed together. Emma tilted her head, waiting for a response, but I didn't answer right away. I just stood there, letting the weight of her words sink in. Be a big boy, she had said, as if it were that simple. The audacity, the cruelty hidden behind that cold indifference. Emma stood there, confident, like she was expecting me to break down the way she wanted, like she thought she had the upper hand. But she had no idea what was coming. I knew I needed to stay calm. I needed to stay smart. She was baiting me, looking for me to crumble, to shout, to beg, to give her control. I wasn't going to give her that satisfaction. I took a long breath, forcing myself to speak, though my voice was thick with anger. I need a drink. Emma blinked, her gaze faltering for just a moment. For the first time, I saw a hint of uncertainty in her eyes. She had expected anger, maybe even despair, but instead, she was met with an unsettling calm. Without a word, I turned and walked out of the bedroom, heading downstairs to the kitchen. My hands were unsteady as I grabbed a glass and filled it with whiskey to the top. I didn't even care for whiskey. It was Emma's drink of choice. But I needed something to steady my nerves, so I took a long sip, letting the sharp burn settle me. Then I pulled my phone from my pocket. My mind clicked into gear, already mapping out what came next. Emma thought she had control. She thought she could walk away without consequences. But what she didn't understand was that I wasn't about to let her go unscathed. Scrolling through my contacts, I found the name I was looking for. Thomas. An old acquaintance, and lucky for me, a private investigator. I wasted no time sending a message. Need a favor. Urgent. Almost immediately, the 3 dots appeared. What's up? I replied quickly. My wife's cheating. I need everything you can find on the guy. Name, address, job, everything. Thomas didn't waste time asking questions. His response was simple. I'll get on it. Give me a couple of hours. I set my phone down and let out a long breath. I was done being the clueless husband, done being the predictable one. If Emma wanted to destroy everything, then I would gladly set the match. Just then, I heard the soft sound of footsteps behind me. I didn't turn. I knew she was there before she spoke. You're handling this better than I expected, she said, her voice low but defensive. I took another sip of whiskey, relishing the warmth it spread. Should I be throwing things? I asked, my tone casual. Crying? Begging you to stay? Emma leaned against the kitchen island, her arms folded tightly across her chest. I don't know, she muttered. I just thought you'd react differently. Finally, I turned to face her. What would you prefer, Emma? Should I fight for you? I asked, taking a step closer, my voice lowering. Should I pretend this marriage is worth saving? Or should I just admit that you were planning to leave all along? For a split second, she hesitated. It was brief, but enough to show she hadn't prepared for this. She had thought she knew me, thought I'd crumble, but now she was seeing something else, something colder. I set the glass down with a quiet clink. You said you'd tell me eventually. Was that before or after you had a backup plan? Emma's jaw clenched. That's not... Don't lie to me, I interrupted. She stopped, the silence stretching between us. I could almost see the wheels turning in her head. You've been sleeping with him for a year, I continued, my voice steady. You don't take those kinds of risks unless you're planning your exit. She didn't say a word. Her silence confirmed everything. I picked up my glass again, swirling the amber liquid. So, what was the plan, Emma? I asked. Were you going to empty our bank accounts first? Wait until you had a place to go? Or were you just planning to disappear one day and leave me to pick up the pieces? Emma exhaled sharply, shifting her weight uncomfortably. I wasn't going to disappear, she said quietly. I was going to talk to you, Larry. But then you found out, and now the timelines just moved up. I finished her sentence for her. A little sooner than you planned, huh? She flinched, just the slightest movement, but it was enough. I couldn't suppress the small smirk that tugged at my lips. You're enjoying this, she accused, her voice cutting. I tilted my head, considering her words carefully. Enjoying? No, but I'll admit, it's a nice change of pace watching you squirm. She scoffed, rolling her eyes. Jesus, Larry. Always the victim, huh? I muttered under my breath. Her expression twisted in frustration. You think I'm playing the victim? I let out a bitter laugh. You know what, Emma? You're right. I was the victim. But not anymore. A flicker of something crossed her face. Uncertainty, maybe fear. She pushed herself off the counter. I'm going to bed. You can stay down here wallowing if you want. I let her go. She had no idea what was coming next. I didn't sleep that night. Emma did. Soundly, as though nothing had changed. As if she hadn't just demolished 6 years of marriage with nothing more than a smug look and a shrug. From the hallway, I could hear her breathing, soft and steady, as if the world hadn't shifted under her feet. But not for me. I sat alone in the dark living room, my mind racing through every little detail. The late nights at work, the random trips that never quite added up, the absence of affection, the way she'd pull away when I kissed her. The space she suddenly needed. I had been so blind. At 2:40 a.m. my phone buzzed. It was a message from Thomas. Got what you need. Call me. I started dialing before I'd even finished reading the message. The phone rang once, and then he picked up. You sitting down? Thomas's voice was steady, but there was a sharp edge to it. Just tell me, I said, exhaling sharply, trying to calm the storm brewing inside me. His name's Jacob Lewis, 36, works in finance. But here's the thing, he's married. I felt a sharp tug in my gut. And? His wife's Evelyn, Thomas continued. They've got 2 kids. I squeezed my eyes shut, pressing my fingers against my temples, trying to hold it together. Of course he's married, I muttered, the bitterness creeping into my voice. Thomas didn't hesitate. For the last 6 months, he's been booking a room every Tuesday and Thursday. Same hotel, the Langham downtown. The words hit like a physical blow. I knew that hotel. Emma had mentioned it once, almost offhandedly, saying it was where her company put up out-of-town clients. The pieces were clicking into place, almost too easily. I forced my voice to stay calm, but my nerves were rattling. Anything on his wife? Yeah. She's a corporate lawyer, Thomas said. Works long hours, probably why he's got all that free time. I can get you her number if you want it. I paused, my mind spinning. Part of me wanted to say no. Dragging someone else into this mess wasn't right. But then I thought about Emma. Her smug, self-satisfied look, the way she'd mock me. It made something click. She thought she had the upper hand. She thought I wouldn't fight back. Well, she was wrong. "Yeah," I said, my voice hardening. "Send me the number." The next morning, everything seemed normal, like nothing had changed. Emma came downstairs, stretching and yawning, casually swiping a sip of my coffee like nothing had happened, like she hadn't just confessed to a year-long affair the night before, like we were just another couple starting their day. I let her play her game. She sat across from me, scrolling through her new phone. Of course, she'd already replaced the one I'd given her. "I'm going out later," she said, looking up from the screen, "meeting a friend." "A friend," I repeated, stirring my coffee slowly, keeping my tone as casual as possible. "Jacob." The pause was almost imperceptible, but I saw it. Her fingers tightened around her mug, and her eyes shot up to meet mine, sharp and calculating. "Excuse me?" she asked, her voice dangerously even. I smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. "Jacob Lewis, 36, works in finance, married with 2 kids, books a hotel room at the Langham twice a week. That Jacob." Her face drained of color. I leaned in, resting my elbows on the table, watching her unravel. "Oh, I'm sorry," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Did you think I was just going to roll over and let you walk all over me?" Emma swallowed hard, placing her mug down with exaggerated care. Her hands shook. "How did you—" "I have my ways," I said, taking a deliberate sip of my coffee, savoring the moment. "And here's the best part, Emma." Her eyes widened. "You did what?" "I called his wife." Emma sprang to her feet, the chair screeching as it scraped against the floor. "Larry, you did not." "Oh, I did." I cut her off, my voice sharp. "Evelyn Lewis knows everything. Every text, every hotel visit, every disgusting little detail." I tilted my head, watching her closely. "How's that for predictable?" Emma's breath hitched, shallow and quick. Her fists clenched at her sides, her whole body rigid with tension. "You had no right." I stood up, taking my time, walking over to where she was standing. My voice dropped, low and dangerous. "No right? You destroyed our marriage, Emma. You spat in my face and told me to man up. And now you're mad because I'm not playing by your rules?" Her nostrils flared, her face turning red with anger. "This wasn't just about you." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh? Then what was it about, Emma? Your boredom? Your need to feel alive?" She ran a hand through her hair, frustration boiling over, her voice shaking. "I don't owe you a fucking explanation." I stepped closer, my voice lowering even further, cutting through the tension like a knife. "No, but you do owe me a divorce." Her mouth snapped shut. I didn't let up. "Evelyn's kicking Jacob out. He's about to lose everything. The house, the children." Those words stirred something in me. Emma's breathing was erratic, almost frantic, in a way I had never seen before. She was trapped, completely unsteady. "And what about you?" I asked softly, but my tone held no compassion. "You're about to lose everything as well," I went on, allowing the weight of my words to settle. "The house is mine. I'm keeping my money. By the time I leave, you'll be left with nothing." Emma didn't fly at me in a burst of fury. That wasn't her nature. But she grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin, her voice now quivering with panic. "Larry, please!" I shook her off, the motion swift and final. It was already too late. She staggered back, her eyes locking onto mine, really searching, as though seeing me for the first time. And in that fleeting moment, I saw it, the realization that she had lost. I backed away, grabbing my keys, and as I turned to leave, I looked back at her one last time. "Grow up," I said, before stepping out the door. I didn't go to work that day. I didn't head anywhere familiar either. Instead, I drove aimlessly, my mind playing back every moment, every word that had just transpired. Emma's expression when I mentioned Jacob's wife, the way her certainty shattered, unraveling into something far more raw and vulnerable than I'd ever expected. She hadn't anticipated me standing firm. She thought I'd fold, that I'd cave, that I'd let her win. But now, she was the one cornered. I ended up in a random parking lot, and just as I parked, my phone buzzed. I saw the number and knew exactly who it was before answering. "Evelyn," I said, keeping my voice flat and neutral. There was a brief pause on the line before a sharp, controlled voice responded. "Larry." I could hear the bite in her voice. "He's begging," she said, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. "Actually, he's crying." I leaned back in my seat, letting out a long breath. I didn't think he had it in him. "You let him stay?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Hell no," she replied. I could hear the car door slam in the background. Told him to pack his shit and get out. He tried to gaslight me, of course, said it was a mistake, that I was overreacting, that I was being emotional. She let out another cold, humorless laugh. Imagine that. Overreacting. I shook my head. They always think they can talk their way out of it. Evelyn hummed in agreement. "And your wife? She's in shock, huh?" "Good," I replied, my tone as dry as the silence that followed. We both sat there, the hum of her car engine filling the gap between us. Then her voice softened. "Thank you for telling me." I swallowed, the weight of her gratitude sitting heavy in my chest. "You deserve to know." After a long pause, she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, "What's next for you?" I exhaled slowly, watching a pigeon peck at the ground as though it had nothing else to do. "I'm divorcing her," I said, the words coming out without hesitation. Another pause. Then, almost as a whisper, Evelyn offered, "If you need a lawyer, I know a few good ones." I chuckled, dry and quick. "I might take you up on that." We didn't say goodbye. There was no need. We hung up, two people tied together by the same betrayal, each processing it in our own way. When I got home, the silence was almost suffocating. Too still. I shut the door behind me, the weight of the quiet pressing in from all sides. Emma was sitting on the couch, staring at the blank TV screen, her arms tightly folded across her chest. Her nails dug into her own skin. She didn't even look up as I walked past. I went into the kitchen, grabbed a bottle of water, and twisted the cap off. Still no reaction from her. I stood there for a moment before asking, almost in a whisper, "Are you really going to divorce me?" I took a sip of water, placing the bottle back down slowly, deliberately. "Yes," she answered, her voice tight. A shaky breath followed. "Just like that?" I turned to face her completely, my expression unreadable. "Just like that." Emma's head lifted slowly, her eyes swollen and red. I couldn't tell if she had been crying or if exhaustion had caught up with her. Either way, she looked lost, like she couldn't believe what was happening. For the first time, I had the power. Suddenly, she stood and moved toward me, her hands reaching out as though she might touch me. "Larry, please," she begged. I shook my head, cold and unmoving. "No." Her hands hovered, desperate, near my arm. "Fix this," she whispered, her voice trembling. I let out a bitter laugh. "Oh, I will. Believe me, I will." She shook her head, frantic now. "I fucked up, okay? I know that." I stared at her, unflinching. "You were selfish. You were reckless." I took a step closer, my voice low and steady. "But none of that matters now. You don't get to cheat on me for a year and expect me to just forgive you." She told me to handle it like an adult, but when everything began to fall apart, she begged me to stay. Her expression was unreadable, a mix of emotions I couldn't quite place. Was it regret? Guilt? Or was it panic at the thought of losing what she thought was a permanent fixture in her life? "You're making a terrible mistake," she murmured, her voice barely a whisper. I stepped past her, shaking my head. No, Emma. The mistake was ever believing in you. She didn't move as I ascended the stairs. She didn't try to stop me. Instead, she stood there, frozen, watching as everything we'd built crumbled. And for the first time, I didn't care. The next morning, the divorce papers sat neatly on the kitchen table. Emma stared at them as though they might explode at any moment. I took a seat across from her, arms crossed, waiting. She'd been pacing back and forth for what felt like hours, tugging at her hair, biting her lip, stalling for time. "You're really serious about this," she said, her voice wavering slightly. I didn't answer. A bitter laugh escaped her, and she shook her head. "You're not even going to try to fix this?" I raised an eyebrow. "Fix what, Emma? The affair that lasted a year?" Her voice faltered, dropping to almost a whisper. "The fact that you looked me in the eye and told me you couldn't stand me?" She winced as though the memory still stung. "Good." I tapped the divorce papers. "Sign them." She didn't move. "Larry, come on," she said, her voice softening, almost pleading. "We have history together." I tilted my head, unfazed. "You should have thought about that before you let some other guy screw you in a hotel twice a week." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "You don't have to be this cruel." I let out a short, humorless laugh. "Cruel? What you did to me was cruel. I'm just cleaning up the mess you made." Emma took a sharp breath and closed her eyes, the weight of it all seeming to crush her. When she opened them again, her tone had shifted. No more pleading. Now it was colder. "So, that's it?" Her voice was sharp, distant. 6 years? Just gone like that? I let the silence linger for a moment before replying, "For me, yeah." She swallowed hard, her eyes flicking back to the divorce papers, her fingers twitching as if she was deciding whether to fight or give in. And then, just like that, the real Emma emerged. She scoffed, rolling her eyes. "You want to play hardball, Larry? Fine. Let's do it." In one swift motion, she grabbed the papers off the table. "You think you can just toss me aside like I'm nothing? Like I meant nothing to you?" I stayed silent, letting her anger play out. "You want to know why I cheated?" she continued, her voice rising in fury. "Because you're boring. You're predictable. You go to work, come home. It's the same damn thing every single day, like you're on autopilot, like a robot." She slammed the papers down. "You lost me long before Jacob ever touched me." Something inside me twisted, but it wasn't pain. It was disgust. I leaned forward, elbows on the table. "You lost me the moment you thought I would ever accept this." Her jaw tightened, her body stiffening. I stood up, grabbing my keys. "Take your time with those," I said, nodding at the papers. "But don't take too long. I'd hate for things to get messy." Her eyes narrowed with suspicion. "What the hell does that mean?" I smirked. "You'll find out." Then I turned and left, leaving her to wonder just how far she'd fallen. Emma called me 6 times that day. I ignored every one. By the 7th, she left a voicemail. I listened to it while sitting in my car outside a bar, letting her words seep through the speakers like poison. "Larry, what the hell are you doing?" Her voice was sharp, but there was something underneath. Fear. "I know you're trying to screw me over. Just tell me what you're planning." A shaky breath followed. "You're not like this. You don't play games." I couldn't help but smirk. She was wrong. I had been playing her game for a year without even realizing it. But now I was in control. I deleted the voicemail and got out of the car. Inside the bar, Evelyn Lewis was already waiting. She looked different from the first time we spoke on the phone, sharper, more confident. The helpless, blindfolded woman from yesterday was gone. She stood tall, her eyes hard as steel. "Larry," she greeted, lifting her drink in my direction. "I knew you'd show up, figured you'd back out, but here you are." Without hesitation, I took a seat across from her. "Not a chance," I said, my tone calm and steady. She studied me for a moment, her gaze intense, like she was weighing my resolve. Without a word, she slid a folder across the table to me. "This is Jacob," she said coolly. "Bank statements, hidden credit card charges, all the expenses he thought I wouldn't catch." She let out a dry chuckle. "Men like him always think we're too blind to see through their games." I opened the folder. The numbers blurred for a second, but then I caught the key details. Purchases at the Langham, expensive gifts. Not for his wife, but for Emma. Jewelry, designer bags, a dress I recognized, the one I'd seen in our own closet. I let out a slow breath, my stomach twisting with the bitter truth. He really thought he could juggle both worlds. Evelyn leaned back in her chair, swirled her drink, the ice clinking lightly. That's the thing about cheaters. They don't see the consequences coming, not until it's too late. I looked up at her. "What are you going to do about Jacob?" A wicked grin spread across her face. "I'm taking everything." I couldn't help the small smile that tugged at my lips. Exactly what I wanted to hear. She gave me a small nod, her eyes gleaming with understanding. "And Emma?" I slowly closed the folder, resting my hand on top of it. "She thinks I'll just hand over half and walk away." Evelyn raised an eyebrow. "What will you actually do?" I leaned in, my voice dropping to a low whisper. "I'm going to bury her." A flicker of something, approval, maybe admiration, crossed Evelyn's face. We clinked glasses. Emma had no clue what was about to hit her. 2 days later, Emma finally caught on. I was sitting in the living room when she stormed in, clutching her phone like it was her lifeline. "Larry!" she spat, her voice quivering with panic. I took my time, sipping my coffee before I answered. "Morning." "Cut the act," she demanded, tossing her phone onto the coffee table. The screen flashed with an email from our joint bank account. Her accounts were frozen. I let out a soft, satisfied breath. "Saw that, did you?" Her hands were shaking. "You locked me out of our money?" I placed my mug down, stretched my arms out behind me, and met her gaze without a flicker of emotion. "Technically, I locked you out of my money." She blinked in disbelief. "We share that account, Larry. Doesn't seem like it. Last time I checked, I was the one making the deposits. You were the one making the withdrawals." Her face flushed, red hot with rage. I smiled, cold and unfeeling. "You honestly thought you could just walk away with half, didn't you?" Her eyes blazed with fury. "That's how divorce works, idiot." I exhaled slowly, savoring the moment. "You were entitled to half, until I hired a lawyer." Her expression went stiff. I stood up, towering over her now. "Did you know adultery can sometimes void spousal support?" I watched her, tilting my head slightly. "Evelyn's lawyer has been very useful. Corporate lawyers. Brutal." She opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. "You can't do this," she finally whispered, her voice trembling. I interrupted her, my voice calm but threatening. "I already did." Her fingers were twitching, her nails digging into her palms as she fought to keep her composure. "You fucking coward, Larry." I chuckled, entertained by her desperation. "Coward?" I stepped closer, my voice a low hiss. "Emma, you spent a year lying to my face, sneaking around behind my back, letting another man touch you while you came home and acted like everything was fine. And now that the consequences are real, you want to complain about fairness?" She sucked in a breath, her chest rising and falling rapidly. I took another step, closing the distance between us. "You said I was predictable," I said with a smirk. "How's this for a surprise?" Her breathing was shallow, panic and disbelief warring in her eyes. She had always thought she had control, the safe, boring husband who would never fight back. Now? Now she was trapped. "You're going to regret this," she whispered, but her voice wavered. I tilted my head, amused by her empty threat. "I regret loving you. But this?" I smiled, cruel and cold. "This? I'm actually enjoying. She gasped, as though I had struck her. I picked up my coffee again and turned away, dismissing her completely. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have an appointment with my lawyer. You should probably find one too, if you can afford it. She stood frozen, breath caught in her throat, unable to respond. I stepped out, leaving her standing there, finally experiencing firsthand the sensation of being utterly powerless. For 2 entire days, Emma didn't speak a word to me. I could tell she was in shock. She had always been the one who called the shots, always had the upper hand. But now, bit by bit, I was taking that control from her. On the 3rd day, she cracked. I had just returned from a meeting with my lawyer when I walked in. Emma was already there, waiting. Her arms were crossed, her foot tapping with irritation, and her gaze was sharp, filled with rage. "You think you're so clever, don't you?" she hissed. I locked the door behind me, taking my time. Well, I managed to outsmart a woman who thought she could cheat on me and just walk away with half of everything. So, yeah, I'd say I'm pretty clever. Her nostrils flared, and I could almost feel the heat of her fury rising. "I should have left you a long time ago," she said through clenched teeth. I couldn't hold back a smirk. "You tried. You just weren't fast enough." She moved a step closer, her posture radiating hostility. "You want to hurt me? Fine. But don't pretend you were some perfect husband, Larry." Her finger jabbed sharply into my chest. "You ignored me. You made me feel invisible in my own damn house." I inhaled deeply, maintaining my calm. "So, instead of talking to me, you decided to spread your legs for someone else?" Her slap was quick and hard, catching me off guard for a split second. But I didn't flinch. The sting of it lingered, but I didn't move. I didn't show a reaction. I turned back to her slowly, making sure to take my time, until our eyes met. She froze. I wasn't angry. No, I was amused. "Oh, sweetheart," I said in a voice that was almost too calm. "That was the last mistake you'll ever make in this house." Her breath caught, and I walked past her, pulling a document from my bag. I set it on the kitchen counter. "What's this?" she demanded, her voice tight. I gave her a smile. "Your eviction notice." Her face drained of color. You can't do this." I shrugged nonchalantly. "I can, and I just did." Emma's hands shook as she grabbed the paper, her eyes scanning it in disbelief. "You're kicking me out of our house?" I grabbed a beer from the fridge, cracked it open, and leaned casually against the counter. "No, Emma, I'm kicking you out of my house." Her eyes shot up to mine, burning with pure hatred. "The court won't let you get away with this." I took a slow sip, savoring the moment. "You should read more carefully. Turns out, when one spouse cheats, the other can file for exclusive use of the home during divorce proceedings." I let out a small, victorious grin. Lucky for me, we had that little adultery clause in our prenup. Emma's breathing quickened, panic setting in. It was dawning on her. She was losing everything. Her money, gone. Her reputation, in tatters. Her home, no longer hers. "You've got 1 week to get out," I added, finishing my beer. "Or the sheriff will handle it." Her hand trembled as she gripped the paper, her eyes distant. The fight was leaving her now, replaced with a look of fear I hadn't seen before. I leaned in close, lowering my voice to something almost tender. "Be a big girl about it, Emma." She slumped into a chair, defeated. I turned and walked away. 4 days later, Emma left, not out of choice, but because she had no other option. I came home that evening to find her sitting on the floor, surrounded by half-filled boxes, her eyes vacant as she stared at the wall. For a brief moment, she seemed so small, so broken. A month ago, I might have felt something for her. But now, I just watched. "You're really going through with this?" she murmured, her gaze fixed on the floor. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "Already did." She exhaled shakily. "I don't know where to go." I raised an eyebrow. "Not my problem." Her head snapped up, her eyes blazing. You're enjoying this, aren't you? I tilted my head, considering her words. Should I be suffering, Emma? She scoffed, running a hand through her hair. You don't have to be such a jerk about it. I pushed off the door frame and took a few steps closer. Funny thing is, for a year, you treated me like I was invisible, like I was just some boring, predictable husband you could put up with. But now that you've lost it all, suddenly, I'm the villain. She pressed her lips together, silencing herself. I crouched down, placing my elbows on my knees so I was eye level with her. Let me make one thing clear, Emma. I didn't do this to you. I pointed to the boxes scattered around the room. You did. Her jaw tightened, her breath shallow. Larry. I raised my hand, silencing her. No. You don't get to say my name like that. Not anymore. Her words were clipped as she shut her mouth tight. I took a long breath and stood up, my gaze steady on her. You should finish packing up, I said, keeping my voice calm. Emma's throat worked as she swallowed, then shot back, what if I don't? I reached for my phone, tapped a few keys, and held it up in front of her, showing her the sheriff's contact. Her face went pale, color draining from her skin. She stared at the screen in silence, frozen for a moment. Then, with a slow, deliberate motion, she stood. You really don't care, do you? She asked, her voice trembling. I took a step back, meeting her gaze. Not anymore, I replied. Emma's breath caught in her chest as she grabbed a box and started throwing her things into it. Each motion was swift and erratic, sharp with pent-up frustration. The box snapped shut with a heavy thud, her fingers white from gripping it so hard. I hope you realize you've just thrown away the best thing that ever happened to you, she said, her voice cold. I chuckled quietly. Emma, you weren't even the best thing to happen to me this week. Her mouth opened, like she was about to say something, but the words didn't come. She just stood there, silent. She had nothing left to argue. With a sharp breath, she grabbed her bag and stormed past me, her shoulder brushing against mine. I didn't try to stop her. The door swung open, and for a brief moment she hesitated, as if expecting me to say something, anything, to make her stay. But I stayed quiet. She stepped through, and the door slammed behind her with a finality that echoed. And just like that, she was gone. I exhaled slowly, my eyes locked on the spot where she'd stood only seconds ago. I thought I would feel relief, maybe a sense of victory, but all I felt was an empty quiet. And oddly enough, that emptiness was the best thing I'd felt in a long time. This story has come to an end. Trust is fragile. It takes years to build, but only seconds to shatter. Betrayal is never an accident. It's a choice, and every choice has consequences. When you're betrayed, you have two options: be the victim or take control. The protagonist chose the latter. He didn't beg, he didn't try to fix what was already broken. Instead, he let the betrayer taste her own poison. Remember, respect is not asked for, it's demanded. Value those who are honest with you, and never fear walking away from those who betray you. Sometimes broken bonds aren't a loss, they're liberation. What's your opinion? Please tell me which city and country you watch this video from, and I'll say goodbye to you until the next video. Goodbye.